was real. Listen.
Hey, Kath.
Hey, Trace.
How's it going?
It's going well. How about you?
I'm okay, thanks. I'm very much looking forward to the first in our series of scary stories leading up to Halloween, which, as you know, is the only holiday I observe or care about.
Same.
Sorry.
Same.
Not
Same.
sorry.
I've already been to Salem.
Already this month.
Listen, Labor Day. So whatever the calendar says, Labor Day stops summer and it's Halloween. That's it for me.
I love it. Oh my God. Yes, I'm right there. And I got to order a bunch of Halloween appropriate garb for this countdown. I'm just my bat necklace. It's not really enough. So, Kathy, I'm dimming the lights
Yes.
figuratively and hearing my mental drum roll.
Right.
I know how that sounds. I can't wait to hear what you have for tonight's scary story.
So I decided tonight, and dear listeners and beloveds, please get closer and closer. Dim the lights. Get your blankets. It's chilly out. It is a chilly fall night, and we are going to talk about the spectral creature known as La Llorona. So,
Ooh.
yeah, and you're probably familiar with it, but I'm going to tell you the story of La Llorona. All right.
All right.
All right. They say that rivers remember what the living try to forget. They remember the secrets we throw into them. Remember the names that we refuse to speak. Remember the screams. You can stand beside the water at night and hear it practicing the old stories, the ones our grandparents said out loud and then crossed themselves, as if words alone might summon company. But there are nights when the river doesn't have to practice. It just opens its mouth and lets her step out. Listen. Do you hear it? That thin seam of sound, like wind catching a torn veil. That's not the reeds. That's not the current. That is the woman the river will not give back. And they call her La Llorona, the weeping woman. And if you've come this far, if you've let the night bring you to the water's edge, you should know the rules. And if the crying sounds near, she's far away. And if the crying sounds far, she is close behind you. Remember that. You may need it. Her name in life was Maria. Say it softly. Maria. Names anchor the dead. Names are the doors that open, and some doors are easier to walk through than others. She wasn't born wicked. Wickedness isn't a birthplace. It's like weather that arrives slow and patient until it floods. She was born beside a river that loved to braid itself into smaller streams, a place where a person could learn to read water the way other children learn to read letters. Maria learned early that the river had moods, glassy, sullen, quick, that you could tell how the day would go by the color of the current under the bridge, that some days it reflected you honestly, and some days it did not. She grew and people noticed. Not the way you notice a flower, but the way you notice a knife. Sharp, bright, dangerous if you are careless. She laughed easily. She danced too long. She liked the edge of things, the last hour before dawn, the last song, the last step out onto the slick stone and then back again. She didn't belong to anyone, and that made men brave and foolish. One in particular. He came from a house that faced the sun. That's how the women in town explained wealth. Some houses face the sun and bloom, some stand in the shadow and learn patience. His boots were clean, even when it rained. His smile carried promises like loose coins. He taught her to ride a horse along the riverbank. He taught her to whisper in a way that nothing could ever overhear. He taught her that the world would bend a little if you pressed hard enough with a pretty hand. He didn't teach her about endings. They had children, 2 or 3 or 1. The number changes in the telling because the wound changes and the scar remains. Each child was a miracle that smelled like milk and heat and new dirt. Each child anchored Maria to mornings and afternoons full of chores and small, exhausted joys. He began to spend his evenings elsewhere. Shadows in his voice, shadows in his pockets. The river knew before she did. It reflected him thinner, lighter, already leaving. And then one day he returned with a different brightness, not sunlight, but lamplight from another house. There was someone waiting for him somewhere else, someone whose house faced a newer sun. You can say a heart breaks. That's the easy verb. But breaks are clean. What happened to Maria wasn't clean. It was a splitting that kept on splitting. It was green glass and then dust and then breath that you cannot catch and then a noise that the body makes when there are no words left in the mouth. He said he would visit. He said he would provide. He said he would take the children. He said so many things that sounded like mercy until they weren't. And the river, oh, the river had a still day, water like a mirror, clouds seated in it like white birds. She held her children, soft, warm, heavy with trust, as if trust were a blanket that you could wrap around a sudden winter. She walked to the edge. She listened to the water say it would hold all the things that she could not hold. And then she did the thing that the mouth cannot say without cracking. The first child went under like a candle blown out. The second fought in a way that will haunt you, even if you weren't there. And the last one, if there was a last, looked up at her with the bewilderment of someone who cannot reconcile the word mama with the word drown. The river accepted them the way a grave accepts flowers, the way a house accepts a new name, quietly, completely. When the world returned to her like a slap, she jumped. Of course she did. Of course she believed the water would either punish or forgive. Her dress ballooned. The current took her hair in its fist and pulled. But the river, which remembers, did not forget this trade. Death is supposed to be like an erasing. In some places, the road narrows, a gate swings open, someone you loved meets you laughing. In other places, there's nothing at all. She reached the place of the gate, and voices asked, "But where are your children?" And Maria's mouth filled with water. Her hands were empty. The gates closed with the sound of a throat swallowing grief. "Go back," the silence told her. "Find them." So she did what mothers do when a door is closed between them and their children. She made herself into a noise that cannot be ignored. She's no longer Maria. She is what a mother becomes when grief has stripped her of the right home and the right name. She is La Llorona. This is where the story splits into tributaries, and each remembers a different bank. In some towns, she wears a wedding dress, long as winter. In others, a village dress with muddy hem, buttons missing like teeth. Her face is sometimes a skull, sometimes a pale oval with features, sometimes exactly the face you have been waiting to see until you blink. Her voice, it doesn't begin as a scream. It begins as someone trying to not wake a sleeping child, broken sobs, and she folds in on themselves, muffled by the long habit of not being allowed to be loud. It begins with the sound of a woman pressing her fist into her mouth. It begins with a word that is mostly breath, hios. And then she remembers there's no one to wake, and the cry opens like a knife. People across the Americas have heard it. It is threaded through languages the way a scar is threaded through skin. In Mexico, children are pulled from the riverbank by wrists and ears as the first wail rises. In Guatemala, they say she walks the cobbles at midnight and leaves drops of the river along your doorstep like coins. Along the Rio Grande, desert towns learn to tell wind from weeping, and sometimes they're wrong. A fisherman once said that he left his nets in the water for the first time in 20 years. He had daughters at home, and the cry that he heard touched his ankles where the river water did, and he decided that there were no fish that night that were worth his heart. A woman in El Paso swears she woke to hear someone standing at the foot of her bed, crying in the small, repetitive way that children have when they run out of breath. She sat up, arms opening on instinct, and the crying stopped as if a hand clapped over her mouth. And when she looked toward the door, it was half open, and the hallway was wet. In New Mexico, there's a story of a soldier who didn't believe. He laughed at the older men on night patrol and called their warnings superstition. He took his turn along the irrigation ditch behind the base. He heard crying. He thought it was a prank. Then a woman, then an animal. He ran toward it. and it ran away, always the same distance before him, until he realized that he was no longer on the path, and the ditch was not the ditch, but the river itself, and his next step would have been his last if the older man had not grabbed him by the collar and hauled him back with the curse that he still refuses to repeat. There's a driver's story. There's always a driver's story. Not the girl in white by the road. No, that's somebody else's country. This is the woman standing by the canal, long hair pasted to her face like weeds, a dress dripping into the dark lace around her ankles. The driver slows. He's the kind of man who believes that he cannot be harmed by a woman who is crying. The window slides down and he asks if she needs help. She turns. Her face is nobody's face. The first syllable rises. I, and the sound touches the back of his teeth with cold. He is lucky enough to be a coward. He drives. He does not look in the mirror until morning. And when he does look at the back seat, it's filled with river water. If you gather these stories and lay them out end to end, they make a river of their own, and they carry you. Where did she come from? The old men ask, as if the origin could save you. Before the conquistadors planted their iron prayers into the soil, there was a woman who walked the night in the great city by the lake, crying for her children. She had names that tasted like obsidian and milk. She warned of a ruin that arrived right on time. When those other gods were pushed down and the new ones were nailed up, grief did not vanish. It just changed its clothes. The white dress is not accidental. The river baptism is not accidental. The story learned new verbs: sin, penance, purgatory, and it still didn't forget. So this tale is a bridge. On one side, a goddess who wept for a nation about to be cut open. On the other, a woman who drowned her children because the world taught her that possession was love and loss was a punishment you could control if you picked the time and the place. And between them stands the water, the river. It keeps both reflections. At night, you can see two women looking back at you, and both are true. There are rules, of course. There are always rules, and they always sound like warnings dressed as advice. Don't go to the river at night. Don't answer when someone calls your name from the dark. Don't follow footsteps that keep the distance just in front of you. Don't comfort what you cannot see. Don't comfort what you can. Mothers tell their children these rules as if rules can hold back rivers. Children grow up into adults who tell themselves that they are not children, and that is the most dangerous rule of all. She wants children, or so they say. She wants yours, or she wants you if you are careless enough to be young, if you are easily carried, if the night makes you brave and foolish. There are stories where she touches your cheek with a hand like lake bottom silt and leaves you feverish for a week. And then there are stories where she takes you under and returns you gently to the surface, changed, the way wine changes water when a drop falls in, subtle, irreversible. And there are rarer stories, the ones people only tell when the door is latched and the last light is out. In those, she calls a man by the name only his mother used, and he follows. Of course he does. He wants to be forgiven by someone, and forgiveness has a voice. And what he meets in the reeds is not forgiveness. Sometimes the dead visit us in the house. You know, that second before sleep fall, the vertical drop that feels like you missed a stair. There are nights when the drop has stairs and someone is climbing them. The air goes heavy. The curtain pauses. The dog makes a sound without opening its mouth. She doesn't always arrive wet. She doesn't always arrive angry. Sometimes she stands in the doorway with her hands cupped, as if still holding the weight of that once made her arms ache in such a good way. Sometimes she is the only shape a dress makes when no one is inside it. A woman once told me that La Llorona came to her at her kitchen sink. The faucet began to run by itself, just a thin thread of water, and she thought of a friend she had not called, and of a child she had not kept, and of a name she had never said aloud. And when she reached to turn the water off, her fingers found another hand already on the tap, cold as a wedding band in winter. She left the house that night with the lights on and returned after sunrise to find damp footsteps leading from the sink to the door. They did not belong to anyone living in that house. And why does she endure, you ask, as if endurance were a virtue here? Because some griefs are younger than our laws and older than our churches. Because betrayal is a language we learn without a tutor. Because water is patient, and patience can be a weapon. Because every mother in every country has had a night where she wondered who she was besides the word mama. And every child has a night where the word mama was big enough to drown in. Because men can leave, because money leaves, because beauty leaves, because children leave one way or another. And the river knows the difference and does not care. Because she is not a lesson so much as an echo. Because if you throw a cry into a canyon, the canyon returns it thinner and colder. And if you do that for centuries, the sound grows intelligent. Because somewhere there is still a gate that will not open. And every night she tries again and again to get through that gate. There is a town with a festival runs along the river each year, paper lanterns floating like patient moons. The children are told that this is to honor the dead. The old women know it's also to light the water so that she can see her way home. Along the bank, men drink, and some of them cry by accident. Salt water goes back to water, no matter who carries it. A boy, always a boy in these stories, always at the age when he believes falling cannot break him, leans out a little too far, lantern in hand. He slips. The river takes the lantern first, then the wrist. People shout. The boy's mother calls his name, and the old panic that collapses time. The lantern floats toward the dark shape that waits in the seam where the festival light stops and the true night begins. The shape lifts the lantern. The shape raises its face. The mother sees a woman with hair like a river's mouth and eyes that have learned every mistake and are generous enough to forgive none of them. The boy coughs water onto the stones at his mother's feet. He remembers being held, but when his mother asks who, he shakes his head and will not say the word mama, not for a week. There are people who will insist that this was mercy. There are people who insist that this was a warning. There are people who insist that those are the same thing. You want to know how to tell when you are in danger? Stand still. Not for long. Just until the night has time to count your breath. Listen. The world is louder than you think. Insects sewing their tiny little sweaters in the grass, the river practicing its story, your own blood murmuring bad advice in your ears. If the crying sounds near, she is far away. If the crying sounds far, she is right behind you. You will be tempted to test it. You will be tempted to turn. The human neck is a curious thing. It believes in its right to see what it hears. Resist. Keep your eyes on the water or on the dirt or on the open road. Names keep doors open. Silence keeps them closed. Do not give her your name. If you must speak, say this. Say, I am not your child. And if you cannot say it, if the night has swallowed your voice, then put the heel of your hand against your own chest and remember the weight of your own name. Sometimes that's enough ballast to keep you from being carried. Sometimes. There are skeptics. Let them be. Skeptics are the prayer candles of the modern world. They burn themselves down, insisting darkness is a misunderstanding. Meanwhile, the rest of us have learned to cross bridges without stopping in the middle. We have learned to keep children close in the fog. We have learned that some cries belong to coyotes, and some to women, and some to rivers, and some to whatever lives where all three meet. And if you are the sort of person who cannot believe until something touches you, well, the night is a generous teacher. There's one more story, because there's always one more story, and it always arrives last, carrying itself like a bowl you shouldn't jostle. And this one takes place in a house that has been empty for a very long time. The wallpaper has peeled into petals. The stove remembers soup. The floorboards remember those steps were heavy and that were light. Someone comes to look at it with a key on a ribbon, thinking of fresh paint and the way new promises sound in old rooms. They go room to room, naming what will be. This will be the table, and This will be the bed. This will be the morning. They stop at the sink. The faucet is old. The old ones are honest. When you turn them, they tell you exactly what they're about to do. They turn it, water comes. At first clear, then colored just a little bit with tea stain of long old pipes. They let it run, and they think of winter soups and the soft violence of a dishwasher and cracked hands, and then behind them, something begins to weep. They think, oh, the house is settling. They think it's a neighbor. They think the past is rude and alive, and they turn and no one is there. The crying continues, not from a room, not from a person, but from the water itself, from the thin braid of it slipping into the sink. It's saying one word over and over, like a rosary bead you cannot drop. Children, children, children. They turn the tap off. The crying stops. They turn it on. The crying returns. They turn it off. They lean on the sink and feel the cold move through the metal and into their bones. They keep the house. Of course they do. People are always keeping things that scare them. It makes the fear feel useful. In winter, the pipes groan and the faucet cries at night, and they get up and they go to the kitchen and they stand with their hands on the tap and not turning it, listening to a woman on the other side of the water beg for children who would not answer her, even if they could. Oh, it's late now. The river has said everything that it intends to say tonight. The insects are finishing their sowing. Your name sits heavy and safe in your mouth. You're almost brave enough to look behind you. Don't. Walk away. Let the river keep its memory and its dead. Let her walk the bank alone. If you hear the cry thin out behind you, if you hear it change from near to far, do not be curious. Curiosity is a door without a lock. Keep your feet on the path and your eyes on the ground and your hands empty, as if you are ready to receive something and hoping that you never will. And if, when you arrive back where the light begins, do not tell yourself that you imagined it. The night does not need your permission to be real. Say thank you to your bones. Say your name once out loud like a bell calling you home. Close the door. Remember, the river remembers what the living try to forget. And tonight it remembered you. If in the middle of the night you wake to a sound that is not your house, not your breath, not the kind of grief that belongs to the living. If you hear, I, my children, float like a veil across your bed, press your palm to your chest. Keep your name. Keep your light. Keep your door closed. Morning is a country that the dead can't cross, but night is a river, and she is walking it still. That is the story of La Llorona. That's at least the story we're telling tonight.
I know that the paranormal is real. Listen. You've just listened to the Curious Explorers podcast with the Kathy Kelly and Tracy Stein. If you enjoyed the episode, remember to like, share, follow, leave us a comment, let us know what you think. And of course, until next time, stay curious.
The paranormal is real. It is real. The paranormal is real. Is it? The paranormal is real. It is real.